The letter trembled in my hands, its crisp edges cutting into my fingertips. Full scholarship to Wharton Business School. The words blurred as tears welled up, but I blinked them back. I couldn't let anyone see me cry, not here in the store, not anywhere. Another day, another story. But first, I'd love to know where my listeners are from. Comment your location below. And hey, if you're enjoying these tales, consider becoming a permanent part of our family. Now, where were we? I'm Hannah, and this moment should have been the happiest of my life. Instead, I was hiding in the stockroom of Carter's general store, surrounded by towers of inventory that had become my prison for the past year. Hannah, where are you? These boxes won't unpack themselves. My father's voice boomed through the store, making me jump. I shoved the letter into my back pocket, my heart pounding against my ribs. Coming. I grabbed a random box, pretending I'd been working all along. The scholarship letter burned against my skin, a secret that could either save me or destroy everything. My father stood at the register, arms crossed, watching as Connor, my younger brother, charmed another customer with his rehearsed smile. See how natural he is with people? Pride dripped from every word. Born for this business. I bit my tongue until I tasted copper. Connor was 15, barely passing his classes, but he was the golden child, the chosen heir. I set the box down harder than necessary, making my father's head snap toward me. Careful with the merchandise, he snapped. Those are crystal wine glasses, not your teenage attitude. The bell above the door chimed, and my grandmother Eleanor walked in, her silver hair gleaming in the fluorescent lights. My chest loosened slightly. She was the only one who saw me, really saw me. Hannah, darling, she called out, ignoring my father's presence. Ready for our Saturday business lesson? Before I could answer, my father stepped between us. Actually, Mother, Hannah needs to finish inventory today. We're short-staffed. Richard, Eleanor's voice carried that steel edge I'd always admired. Our lessons are non-negotiable. You agreed. I watched their silent battle of wills, counting the seconds until one of them broke. My father looked away first. He always did. Fine, but be back in 2 hours. We have a shipment coming in. Eleanor linked her arm through mine, leading me toward the door. As we passed Connor, he didn't even look up from his phone. Why should he? He'd never had to fight for anything in his life. Now, Eleanor said once we were seated in her office above the store, "Tell me what's bothering you. Your aura's all wrong today." I pulled out the crumpled letter, smoothing it on her mahogany desk. Her eyes widened as she read, then filled with tears. Oh, Hannah, this is wonderful. A full scholarship to Wharton? Your parents must be thrilled. My laugh came out bitter and hollow. I haven't told them. What's the point? They'll just say no, like they always do. Nonsense. This is your future we're talking about. Your parents will understand. Like they understood when I wanted to take that business course last summer, or when I suggested updating our inventory system. I stood up, pacing the room. They don't want me to succeed, Grandma. They want me to stay here, working for free, watching Connor inherit everything I've worked for. Eleanor's face hardened. Then we'll make them understand. Tonight, I'll host a family dinner to celebrate. No, please. 7 o'clock. No arguments. She reached for her phone. It's time your parents remembered who built this business from nothing. And who really has the final say. I left her office with dread coiling in my stomach. Tonight would change everything, but not in the way my grandmother imagined. Because what none of them knew was that I discovered something else last week, something that would tear our family apart. The scholarship wasn't just my ticket to freedom anymore. It was my weapon. And tonight, I'd finally use it. Grandmother's dining room felt like a courtroom. The mahogany table stretched between us like a barrier, my parents on one side, Eleanor at the head, and me, trapped between worlds. The scholarship letter lay in the center, pristine white against dark wood. Absolutely not. My father's wine glass hit the table hard enough to slosh red onto the white tablecloth. This isn't up for discussion. Richard, Eleanor's voice cut through the tension. Your daughter has earned a full scholarship to one of the most prestigious business schools in the country. This is an achievement worth celebrating. My mother's perfectly manicured nails drummed against her glass. The store needs her here. Family comes first, Eleanor. You taught us that. I taught you about ambition, Eleanor shot back. About building something from nothing. That's exactly what Hannah wants to do. I stared at the growing wine stain on the tablecloth, watching it spread like the poison in our family. Connor's empty chair mocked us. He was at soccer practice, naturally excused from this family crisis. Hannah knows her place, my father said, as if I weren't even there. The store is her inheritance. My inheritance? The words burst out before I could stop them. That's funny, considering how you parade Connor around as your successor. How you let him skip work whenever he wants while I'm trapped there 60 hours a week without pay. Without pay? Eleanor's head snapped toward my father. Richard, you're not paying her? My father's face reddened. She's learning the business. By stocking shelves and running the register? I pushed back my chair, standing. By watching Connor get praised for showing up once a week while I miss every school event, every social gathering. Everything that makes me feel human. Sit down, my mother hissed. You're embarrassing yourself. No, Mother. I'm embarrassing you. There's a difference. I pulled out my phone, bringing up the photo I'd been saving. Just like there's a difference between managing the store and stealing from it. The room went deadly quiet. My father's face drained of color as I showed Eleanor the photo, a screenshot of doctored inventory records I'd discovered last week. What is this? Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. Ask them where the money from the Wilson account went, I said. Or the Peterson supply order. Or the... My father lunged across the table, grabbing for my phone. Wine glasses toppled. My mother screamed. But Eleanor was faster, snatching the phone from my hand before he could reach it. Richard, she said, her voice trembling as she scrolled through the evidence. What have you done? Nothing that concerns you, Mother. The store is mine now. The store, Eleanor stood slowly, belongs to me. Or have you forgotten who still holds the deed? My mother burst into tears, right on cue. We had expenses. Connor's private coaching, the country club membership. Stop. Eleanor's command froze us all. She turned to me, her eyes bright with unshed tears. How long have you known? A week. I found the discrepancies while updating the inventory sheets. The ones Dad said were a waste of time. My father's chair scraped back. This is ridiculous. Hannah's making up stories because she's jealous of her brother. Because she can't accept her role. Your daughter, Eleanor Cudden, has just shown more business acumen in 5 minutes than you have in 20 years. She'll make an excellent CEO after she graduates from Wharton. What? 3 voices spoke at once. You're going to college, Hannah. And when you graduate, you'll take over as CEO of Carter's General Store. Eleanor's smile was razor sharp. Your father and mother will work under you, at reduced salaries, until they've repaid every penny they've stolen. Unless, of course, they'd prefer I involve the authorities. My parents' faces showed everything: rage, fear, defeat. But I felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction. Just a hollow space where family should have been. I'll see you at work tomorrow, I said, gathering my things. Early shift, right? Don't worry, I'll do the inventory. I'm good at finding things people try to hide. I left them there, with their spilled wine and shattered illusions. Tomorrow would bring consequences, but tonight I had won. And it felt nothing like victory. The smell of fresh coffee and warm pastries wrapped around me like a shield as I tied my apron behind the counter at Megan's cafe. 3 weeks of secret morning shifts had taught me more about business than years at my family store. Here, my opinions mattered. My ideas were heard. And most importantly, I got paid. You're getting good at those lattes, Megan said, watching me create a perfect leaf pattern in the foam. Much better than serving hardware and paint samples, right? I froze, nearly spilling the drink. How did you? Small town, Hannah. Your family store is practically an institution. She smiled, but her eyes were serious. Don't worry, your secret's safe with me. Though I'm curious why you're hiding this from them. The bell above the door chimed before I could answer. My blood turned to ice as Connor walked in, his soccer team in tow. Our eyes met. His widened in recognition, then narrowed with calculation. In that moment, my 15-year-old brother looked exactly like our father. "Well," he drawled, approaching the counter. "This is interesting. What can I get you?" I kept my voice professional, praying he'd play along. "Does Dad know his perfect daughter is moonlighting at a coffee shop?" His teammates snickered. I felt Megan tense beside me. "Connor, relax," he cut me off, pulling out his phone. "I'm not going to tell him. Yet. But I might need some favors." My hands clenched around the counter. "That's called blackmail. That's called family." He mimicked our father's tone perfectly. "Speaking of which, Dad's looking for last month's inventory records. The ones you're supposedly updating. The ones that proved their theft. I'd hidden them in Eleanor's office, but if my father was looking for them..." "I have to go," I told Megan, already untying my apron. "Family emergency." "Family emergency or family prison?" Connor called after me. "Better hurry, sis. Dad's in quite a mood today." I ran the 6 blocks to the store, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through the front windows, I could see my father in Eleanor's office, rifling through her desk. The bell betrayed my entrance. He looked up, his face darkening when he saw me. "Where are they?" He descended the stairs 2 at a time. "The inventory records." "Where did you hide them?" "I don't know what you're talking about." But my voice shook, giving me away. He grabbed my arm, pulling me into the stockroom. "You think you're clever, don't you? Playing detective, running to your grandmother with lies." "They're not lies." I yanked free. "I saw the numbers. I saw what you and Mom did with Connor's college fund, with the store's profits." "You saw nothing." His fist slammed into a shelf, sending paint cans crashing. "You're a child playing at business. Your brother understands loyalty. Family. You're just like your grandmother, too ambitious for your own good. Is that why you're stealing from her?" The words hung between us like poison. His face transformed, becoming someone I didn't recognize. "Listen carefully," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "You will find those records and destroy them. You will apologize to your mother for upsetting her. And you will never, never speak of this again. Or I'll make sure Eleanor learns about your little coffee shop job. How you've been lying to everyone, abandoning your duties here. Connor told you." Connor understands hierarchy. Position. Something you never learned. He straightened his tie, becoming the polished store manager again. "You have until closing to make this right. Don't disappoint me again." He left me there, surrounded by spilled paint and shattered illusions. My phone buzzed, a text from Connor. "Sorry, sis. But family comes first." I sank to the floor, paint seeping into my jeans. The records were safe in Eleanor's home office, not here. But for how long? And what would happen when my father realized that? My phone buzzed again. "Megan, whatever's happening, you have options. Come back when you can. We'll figure it out." Options. I stared at the message, an idea forming. My parents thought they had me trapped, but they'd forgotten one thing. I was Eleanor Carter's granddaughter. And she hadn't built an empire by playing nice. I stood up, paint dripping from my clothes like war paint. Time to show them what real family loyalty looked like. The cafe's morning rush kept me too busy to think, which was exactly what I needed. 2 weeks had passed since Connor's betrayal, and I'd managed to stay one step ahead of my father's search for the evidence. But my time was running out. "Your grandmother's here again," Megan whispered as she passed behind me. 3rd time this week. Eleanor sat in her usual corner booth, pretending to read the newspaper while watching me work. She hadn't mentioned my secret job, but her presence spoke volumes. I brought her usual Earl Grey, setting it down carefully. Is this a coincidence or an intervention? Can't a grandmother enjoy quality tea? She folded her paper, fixing me with that penetrating stare. Though I must say, your latte art is impressive. Almost as impressive as your ability to be in 2 places at once. My hands trembled slightly. I can explain. No need. She pulled out a manila envelope. I think these explain enough. Inside were copies of every doctored record I'd found, plus dozens more going back years. My father's theft ran deeper than I'd imagined. How did you? I built this business, Hannah. Did you really think I wouldn't have my own copies? She sipped her tea. The question is, why didn't you come to me directly? Before I could answer, Jason burst through the door, his face pale. Hannah, you need to see this. He thrust his phone at me. On screen was our local news website. Carter's General Store announces major expansion. Teenage son to head new location. There's more, Jason said quietly. Check the business filing. I scrolled down, my vision blurring as I read. My father had created a new corporation, transferring store assets into Connor's name. He was systematically draining the original business, Eleanor's business, into a new entity she couldn't touch. Well, Eleanor's voice cut through my shock. It seems your father's gotten creative with his theft. I have to stop this. I started untying my apron, but Eleanor's hand caught mine. No, you need to think strategically. Richard's making his move because he's desperate. He knows we have evidence of his earlier fraud. This is his attempt to secure Connor's future before it all falls apart. At your expense, I said. And mine. Actually, Megan joined our huddle, holding up her phone at everyone's expense. Your father just posted the store's new work schedule. You're down for 60 hours next week, all closing shifts. Unpaid, I assume. He's trying to force me out, I realized. Make it impossible for me to keep working here. Or study for finals, Jason added. Or graduate. Eleanor's face hardened. He's not just stealing money anymore. He's stealing your future. What do I do? The words came out smaller than I intended. You fight, Megan said firmly. Starting with this. She handed me an envelope. I was saving it for the right moment. Inside was a job offer, assistant manager position at the cafe, full-time, with benefits and tuition assistance for business classes at the local college. I can't accept this, I whispered. The store will survive without you, Eleanor cut in. The question is, will you survive with it? My phone buzzed, a text from Connor. Dad's looking for you. He knows about the cafe. Better come home now or things get worse. Things are already worse, I said, showing them the message. They have been for a long time. Eleanor stood, gathering her things. Then perhaps it's time to make them better. The question is, are you ready for what that means? I looked around, at Megan's encouraging smile, Jason's worried face, the cafe that had become more home than my house ever was. Then at Eleanor, who'd built an empire from nothing and was watching it be stolen piece by piece. Yes, I said, my voice stronger. I'm ready. Good. Eleanor's smile was sharp as broken glass. Because your father isn't the only one who can play the legal system. Shall we show him how it's really done? I took off my apron for the last time, folding it carefully. The war for Carter's General Store was about to begin, and this time I was choosing my side. The graduation gown felt like armor as I stood in front of my bedroom mirror. Downstairs, I could hear my parents hosting their annual graduation party, not for me, but for the family's social circle. My own celebration would come later, they'd said, after I'd earned it through summer work at the store. My phone buzzed with Eleanor's text, "Everything's ready. Are you sure about this?" Before I could respond, Connor appeared in my doorway. Dad wants you downstairs. Now. Since when are you his messenger? Since he found out about your secret bank account. Connor's face was uncharacteristically serious. Hannah, he's really angry. Maybe you should just what? Give up? Let him take everything. I pulled out my desk drawer, grabbing the USB drive containing copies of all the evidence. Like you did? I didn't have a choice. We always have a choice, Connor. You just made the easy one. Downstairs, the party chatter died as I descended. My father stood at the bottom of the stairs, holding my laptop, the one I'd bought with my cafe earnings. Care to explain this? He turned the screen toward me, showing my bank statements. Or how about these? He held up printed emails between Eleanor and her lawyers. My mother hurried the last guests out, her perfect hostess smile cracking. Richard, perhaps we should discuss this privately. No. His voice cut through the room. I want witnesses for this. I want everyone to see exactly what kind of daughter we raised. I reached the bottom step, acutely aware of Connor watching from above, of Jason hovering near the front door, ready with his car if I needed escape. You want witnesses? I kept my voice steady. Fine. Let's talk about the Wilson account. The Peterson orders. The new corporation you created in Connor's name. The color drained from his face. You ungrateful. Or maybe we should discuss this. I pulled out my phone, playing the recording I'd made last week, his voice clearly discussing how to hide assets from Eleanor's auditors. My mother lunged for the phone, but I stepped back. Don't bother. It's already backed up. Everything is. You're bluffing, my father said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. Am I? Check your email. Eleanor's lawyers should have sent the preliminary audit findings by now. He grabbed his phone, scrolling frantically. With each swipe, his face grew darker. You're done here, he finally said, his voice deadly quiet. Pack your things. You have 30 minutes. Richard. My mother's perfect mask cracked completely. You can't. She's been working with Mother behind our backs, Linda. Planning to destroy everything we've built. Everything you stole, you mean. The words felt like fire leaving my mouth. Everything you took from Eleanor, from the store, from me. From you. He laughed, harsh and hollow. What could I possibly have taken from you? My childhood. My choices. My future. I pulled out my graduation cords, valedictorian, honor society, business club president. Everything I earned while you were grooming Connor to steal Eleanor's legacy. Connor's sharp intake of breath from the stairs was the only sound in the room. You have 29 minutes left, my father said. Use them wisely. I turned to the stairs, but Connor blocked my path. Wait, he said, his voice small. Is it true? About the new corporation? Ask him yourself. I pushed past him, heading to my room. Ask him what he's been teaching you about family loyalty. 28 minutes later, I stood on the front lawn with 2 suitcases and my laptop. Jason's car idled at the curb, and Eleanor waited in her Mercedes behind him. Hannah. Connor's voice made me turn. He stood in the doorway, holding something. You forgot this. He tossed me the USB drive I'd left on my desk, the one containing all the evidence. I didn't forget it, I said. I left it for you. Time to make your choice, little brother. I got into Eleanor's car without looking back. In the rearview mirror, I watched Connor stare at the drive in his hand, our father's shadow falling across him from inside. Sometimes burning bridges lights the way forward. I just hoped Connor would see the light before it was too late. Eleanor's study felt like a war room, with paper spread across her antique desk and lawyers' business cards scattered like ammunition. 3 days after being thrown out, I sat across from her, watching as she reviewed the final audit results. $500,000. She set down the report, her hands trembling slightly. My own son stole $500,000. A knock at the door made us both jump. Connor stood there, pale and determined. I found something else. He placed a laptop on the desk, our father's personal computer. The password was my birthday. His laugh was hollow. Guess he never thought I'd use it against him. Eleanor opened a folder labeled New Ventures. Her sharp intake of breath drew me closer. He's selling the store, I whispered, scanning the documents. He's already found a buyer. Not just selling it, Connor's voice cracked. Liquidating it. Everything Grandma built, he's breaking it apart for quick cash. The papers are ready to sign tomorrow. My phone buzzed, a text from Jason. Your parents just went into the store. They're clearing out the safe. Now. Eleanor stood, suddenly every inch the business titan who'd built an empire. We move now. 20 minutes later, we pulled into the store's parking lot. My parents' car sat alone under the security light, casting long shadows. Remember, Eleanor said, let me do the talking. Hannah, you. The store's front window exploded outward, showering glass across the pavement. Through the broken window, I saw flames licking up the wooden shelves. No! Eleanor's scream pierced the night as we ran toward the building. Inside, smoke filled the air, and through it, I saw my father feeding files into the fire, my mother frantically emptying the safe. Stop. My voice was lost in the crackling flames. You're destroying everything. It was already destroyed. My father turned, his face illuminated by the fire. The moment you chose her over family. This is my family's legacy. Eleanor stepped forward, but the flames blocked her path. Everything I built. You built nothing. He threw another stack of papers into the fire. I kept this business running while you played mentor to her. I made the hard choices. I deserved. You deserved prison. Connor's voice cut through the smoke. He held up his phone, recording everything. And now you'll get it. Sirens wailed in the distance. My mother grabbed her purse, stumbling toward the back door. Richard, we have to go. It's over, Dad, I said, watching our family's history burn. Just stop. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, regret, maybe, or recognition. Then he smiled, cold and final. You want to run this business so badly? Try rebuilding it from ashes. He threw the last files into the flames and ran, leaving us to watch everything burn. The firefighters arrived minutes later, but it was too late. The store, Eleanor's legacy, my inheritance, our family's foundation, was gone. Hours later, we sat in Eleanor's kitchen, covered in soot and defeat. My parents had vanished, taking whatever money they'd managed to grab. The police were looking, but we all knew they were long gone. The insurance won't cover it, Eleanor said quietly. Richard canceled the policy last month. Connor stared at his phone, still displaying the video of our father's confession. At least we can prove it was arson. And then what? I looked at my hands, black with ash. The store is gone. The inventory, the records, everything. Not everything. Eleanor pulled out a singed folder, the store's original business plan, written in her own hand decades ago. We still have this. And we have something your father never understood. What's that? Each other. She spread the burned papers on the table. The question is, are you ready to rebuild? Not for revenge anymore, but for ourselves. I touched the charred edge of her business plan, feeling the weight of legacy and loss. The store had been my prison, then my battleground. Now it was ashes. But maybe, just maybe, ashes were the perfect foundation for something new. Where do we start? Eleanor smiled, and for the first time that night, hope flickered stronger than the flames had. We start with the truth. All of it. Together. The police found my parents in a motel 3 states away. They'd managed to grab nearly $50,000 in cash before torching the store. But their escape plan ended at a casino where my father lost most of it in a desperate bid to win enough for a fresh start. Now, 2 weeks later, I stood in the courthouse hallway, watching them being led in for arraignment. Connor's video evidence and Eleanor's financial records had built an airtight case. Ready. Eleanor squeezed my hand. Connor stood on my other side, his usual cockiness replaced by something harder, more determined. My father's eyes locked onto us as they passed. Still playing happy family? His smile was razor sharp. Wait until you see what rebuilding that store really costs. Richard. My mother's mascara was perfect, even in handcuffs. Don't what? Tell them about the second set of books? The ones Eleanor's father kept. He laughed as the bailiff pulled him along. Ask her where the store's startup money really came from. Eleanor's hand tightened on mine. Connor stepped forward, but I held him back. He's lying, Eleanor said, but her voice shook. He's trying to. To what? I turned to face her. What's he talking about? Before she could answer, the prosecutor approached. They're offering a deal. Full restitution, minimal jail time, if they reveal everything about the store's financial history. All of it. Going back to the beginning. Eleanor's face went ash-white. No. Grandma? Connor's voice cracked. What are you telling us? She pulled us into an empty conference room, closing the door. Your grandfather. He wasn't always careful about where he got his loans. When I took over, I cleaned everything up, made it legitimate. But the original money was dirty. The pieces clicked into place. Dad knew. That's why he felt entitled to steal. I built something good from something broken. Eleanor's composure cracked. Everything I taught you, Hannah, about business, about integrity, it wasn't lies. It was redemption. A knock at the door made us jump. The prosecutor again. They're ready to talk. All of you should hear this. In the small interview room, my parents sat across from us, still in handcuffs. My father's smile had grown wider. "Tell them, Mother." "Or shall I?" Eleanor stood. "I'll tell them myself." She faced Connor and me. "Yes, your grandfather borrowed money from criminals. Yes, I knew when I took over. But everything since then, every dollar, every decision, has been clean. I spent 30 years making it right. By hiding the truth?" My father's laugh was bitter. "By pretending you were better than everyone else? I took what I deserved. You took from your children." Eleanor's voice cracked like a whip. "From your family." "Family?" My mother finally spoke. "You want to talk about family? Tell them about Richard's brother. The one who disappeared after threatening to expose everything." The room went silent. Connor grabbed my hand under the table. "My uncle," I whispered. "The one you said died in an accident?" Eleanor sank into her chair. "He was going to destroy everything I'd built. The legitimate business, the community trust, your futures. I didn't. I never meant." "What did you do?" Connor's voice was barely audible. "Nothing." Eleanor's eyes were desperate. "He took the money I offered and disappeared. I haven't heard from him since." My father stood suddenly, making his chains rattle. "There it is. The great Eleanor Carter's true legacy. Buying silence, burying secrets, all while preaching about integrity." I looked around the room, at my grandmother's guilt, my parents' spite, Connor's confusion. Everything I thought I knew about right and wrong, about justice and revenge, blurred. "Stop." My voice cut through the tension. "All of you. This ends now." I pulled out my phone, showing them the screen. A video call connected, revealing a familiar yet strange face. "Hello, Richard." My uncle smiled sadly. "Eleanor, it's been a long time." The truth about legacy, I realized, watching their faces crumble, isn't what we inherit. It's what we choose to do with it. And I was done letting the past poison our future. The new Carter's general store rose from the ashes with clean lines and fresh paint, but I kept one charred beam exposed near the entrance. Some scars deserve to be seen. "Ready." Connor adjusted his name tag, assistant manager glinting under the morning sun. Through the windows, I could see Eleanor arranging the last display, her silver hair catching the light. Almost. I pulled an envelope from my desk. Inside was my acceptance letter to Wharton's Weekend Master of Business Administration program, not quite the full scholarship from before, but a different kind of victory. Beside it lay the plea agreement my parents had signed yesterday, trading full restitution for reduced sentences. The bell chimed. Uncle David walked in, looking more like family now than when he'd been just a ghost story. "The suppliers are all on board. Clean contracts, transparent terms. And the old debts?" I had to ask, though I already knew. "Paid in full." He smiled sadly. "Your grandmother made things right, Hannah." In her own way. Eleanor joined us, carrying a leather-bound ledger I'd never seen before. "I found this in the safe deposit box. My father's original business plan." She traced the worn cover. "Along with this." She handed me a yellowed envelope, my name written in her elegant script. The date showed it was written 17 years ago, the day I was born. "I always knew," she said softly. "Even then, I saw something in you. The strength to break cycles, to build something better." I opened the letter, reading words written by a younger Eleanor to a baby she hoped would understand. To my granddaughter. "Legacy isn't what we leave behind. It's what we choose to carry forward. Choose wisely." The morning light streamed through windows that had once been bars, illuminating the store we'd rebuilt together. Not just the building, but the foundation beneath it: trust, truth, redemption. "First customers in 10 minutes, Connor announced, flipping the sign to open. "Think we're ready?" I looked around, at Uncle David arranging local artisans' work where stolen inventory once sat. At Eleanor teaching Connor the proper way to balance a till, at the community bulletin board advertising local businesses, including Megan's Cafe. The security cameras my father had disabled now worked perfectly. The books were digitized, transparent, open to monthly audits. Every employee, family or not, earned fair wages and respect. "Wait." Eleanor pulled out an old brass key. One last thing. She led us to the register, unlocking a drawer I'd never seen opened. Inside lay a single coin, the first dollar she'd ever earned. I think she pressed it into my palm. This belongs to you now. The metal was warm, weighted with history both dark and light. I could lock it away, let it become another family secret. Or I walked to the front window and placed it on display, right next to the charred beam. A reminder that legacy isn't just what we inherit, but what we choose to transform. The bell chimed again. Jason walked in, carrying coffee for everyone, a morning tradition he'd started when he helped us rebuild. Look who I found outside. Behind him stood a young girl, maybe 16, clutching a resume. I heard you were hiring? My parents want me to work for their company, but I was hoping. I recognized that look, the desperate need to write your own story. Connor did too, judging by his small nod. Come on in, I said, gesturing to my office. Let's talk about your future. Eleanor's letter crinkled in my pocket as I walked, its final words echoing. Choose wisely. We all had. And those choices had built something stronger than revenge, more lasting than justice. They'd built a future worth inheriting. The store's old sign still hung outside, but below it we'd added new words. Carter's General Store, building legacy, one choice at a time. It wasn't perfect. But then again, the best stories never are.